Welcome to the Music and Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Keana W. Mitchell, relationship coach and emotional healing advocate. Each week, we explore how music and therapy intersects to help you heal, grow, and build healthier relationships. Now, today's episode is entitled When Love Hurts, Recognizing and Healing from Emotional Abuse. Now, this is a tender topic, but one that's deeply important. So if you've ever felt confused, silenced, or emotionally unsafe in a relationship, this episode is for you. Last week, we talked about letting go of resentment and how resentment can keep us stuck in cycles of pain and emotional reactivity. We explored how forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but about freeing ourselves from the emotional weight of past hurt. One of the key takeaways was this. Resentment thrives in silence. When we don't speak our truth, when we suppress our needs, resentment builds. And sometimes that silence isn't just self-imposed. It's a result of emotional abuse. So to learn more about how to let go of resentment, click the link in the show notes to listen to last week's episode of the podcast. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a podcast episode about the different types of abuse. And during that episode, we talked about all the types of abuse that can happen in intimate relationships. And emotional abuse is something that we briefly discussed and touched on, but we didn't go into detail. So today, I want to talk a little bit more about emotional abuse. And that's because emotional abuse is something that some people don't even realize is happening to them. It's a type of abuse where people don't even realize that they're being abused until it's either pointed out or they have time to think about it after the relationship, or they hear someone talking about emotional abuse and they're like, wow, that's what's happening to me. So it's not something that's widely recognized or easily to recognize or even describe. So I just thought it would be a good idea for us to sit down and have this conversation so that you can recognize signs of emotional abuse and you can see if you are in an emotionally abusive situation or relationship, or if in the future you're in a relationship and it starts to become emotionally abusive, you'll be able to recognize the signs and make a decision whether you're going to stay or get out of that relationship. So when we're talking about emotional abuse is a pattern of behavior that undermines your sense of self-worth, safety, and emotional stability. Unlike physical abuse, it doesn't leave any visible scars, but the wounds do run deep. It often occurs in intimate relationships where trust and vulnerability are expected. Now, this can also happen in childhood. So if something like this happened in childhood, let's say you were emotionally abused in childhood, and then you got into a relationship where you were experiencing emotional abuse, you might not know what's going on. This might be normal to you. This is something that you've experienced before with your parents, and you may not realize that this is considered to be abuse. So emotional abuse can be insidious. It can develop gradually over time, and it can become normalized over time. And this is why it's so important to recognize those signs early so that emotional abuse is not something that becomes normalized over time. This can happen when the abuser alternates between affection and cruelty. This cycle creates confusion and dependency, making it difficult for the victim to recognize the abuse or even feel empowered to leave. According to the American Psychological Association, emotional abuse includes verbal assaults, threats, humiliation, intimidation, isolation, and other tactics that diminishes a person's sense of identity and dignity. These behaviors are designed to control, manipulate, and silence the victim. Some examples of emotional abuse could be consistently criticizing or belittling you, having your feelings being dismissed or mocked, being manipulated through guilt or fear, experiencing gaslighting, where your reality is denied or distorted. Gaslighting is especially harmful. It makes you question your memory, your instincts, even your sanity. Over time, this can erode your ability to trust yourself, which can lead to anxiety, depression, and physical symptoms like fatigue or chronic stress. Victims can feel isolated, ashamed, and emotionally paralyzed, unsure how to reclaim their voice or rebuild their confidence. Recognizing emotional abuse is the first step toward healing and restoring your faith in yourself. Emotional abuse can begin in ways that feel really caring. It can show up as concern, protectiveness, or even intense affection. These behaviors on the surface can resemble love. But remember, I said resemble love. It's not love. It can resemble or look like love. But over time, it can shift to control, manipulation, and emotional harm. So that's what makes emotional abuse so difficult to recognize, because it doesn't start with cruelty, it starts with charm. The abuser may shower their partner with attention, gifts, or praise, creating a sense of emotional dependency. Then slowly, gradually, they begin to withdraw affection, criticize, isolate, or gaslight, leaving the victim confused and questioning their own reality. Victims often tend to rationalize these behaviors with thoughts like, they're just stressed, that's why they said that, or that's why they did that. They might say something like, well, maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe that's not what they really meant. Or they could say, they really didn't mean this. So these internal dialogues are not signs of weakness, they're signs of survival. When someone you love begins to hurt you emotionally, your brain tries to protect you by minimizing the threat. So this is especially true if you've grown up in environments where emotional manipulation was normalized, if criticism, guilt, or emotional withdrawal were common in your childhood. You may unconsciously associate these behaviors with love. So in this way, emotional abuse can feel familiar, even comforting, because it mirrors past relational patterns. And I do want to point out, it's important to realize that these things happen over time. Because if you went on the first date with someone and they were rude and they criticized you and belittled you and put you down, would you go out with them again? No, you wouldn't. That's how abuse starts. It's like they don't come off as being mean or manipulative or anything like that. They come off as charming and kind. So if your first date was they bought you flowers and they complimented you and they praised you and they talked to you, and they continued to do this for a period of months, got you hooked on them, they were all into you, they loved you and stuff, and then gradually over time, let's say a couple of years in, they start withdrawing their affection, becoming more critical, then it would be difficult for you to even notice what happened, because the change didn't happen immediately, it happened gradually. And that's why sometimes it's so hard for people to recognize they are even in an abusive relationship, because it's not physical abuse, no one is hitting them, it's emotional, and this is happening over time. And so it could be hard for them to realize, hey, I'm really in an abusive relationship. So these are just some of the reasons why this is difficult to identify and recognize, and why we're talking about it today, because I want you to be aware and know that if you feel some kind of way about what your spouse said to you or your partner said to you, and you feel like this is just not right, you feel belittled, you feel demeaned, then you have to look at, am I being emotionally abused? Especially if this is something that continues to happen all the time. It's something to look at to see if you're being emotionally abused. I know a lot of people, I've heard people say, well, if people are being emotionally abused, why don't they just leave? And it's easier said than done. So there are many reasons why people stay in emotionally abusive relationships, and none of them reflect a lack of strength. In fact, staying often requires immense emotional endurance. Common reasons include fear of being alone, because the abuser may have isolated the victim from friends and family or support systems, making the idea of leaving them feel terrifying, because they could be somewhere by themselves and they don't know who they would reach out to even ask for help. They might hope that things will get better. And if you are an optimist like I am, you might think that, oh, it's going to get better, because oftentimes abusers do cycle between cruelty and kindness. So they can be mean to you one minute, kind to you the next. Mean, kind. Mean, kind. So this creates a dynamic known as intermediate reinforcement. So this will keep the victim emotionally hooked, because they believe the good version of their partner will return, especially if they think, oh, they're just doing this because they're stressed. Oh, I'm just overreacting. I'm just not myself today. Or if they're thinking, oh, they really didn't mean that, then you can see how they will have hope that things are going to get better because this person is stressed, and once the stress leaves, then they're not going to treat them that way. When in actuality, that person is just being emotionally abusive toward them, and they're not really stressed at all. Another thing that can make people stay is financial dependence. So, in many cases, the abuser does control the finances, which makes it very difficult for the victim to leave without risking housing, food, stability. If someone has kids, maybe the abuser has told them, hey, you know what, if you leave, I'm going to get custody of the kids, or the kids aren't going with you. So those are some reasons why people do stay in these types of relationships. Another reason could be religious or cultural pressure. Now, some communities discourage divorce or separation, especially for women. They frame endurance as a virtue and discourage self-protection. So if you are in a religion or culture like this, or grew up in a religion or culture like this, then it would be very difficult for you to leave, because you might feel like, if I leave, I'm dishonoring God. If I leave, I'm hurting God. I have to stay no matter how bad things get, because that's what God wants, and He hates divorce. Or if it's a culture, you might think, I don't want to disappoint my family. They're going to disown me if I do this. So these are just some reasons why people do stay, because of religion or cultural pressure. Trauma bonding is another thing that keeps people stuck in these types of relationships. Now, trauma bonding is a psychological phenomenon, and it occurs when a victim forms a deep emotional attachment to the abuser, despite the harm. It's fueled by cycles of abuse and reconciliation, which creates intense emotional highs and lows. So, leaving an emotionally abusive relationship is not just about walking away. It's about reclaiming your voice and rebuilding your identity and creating emotional safety. The process is layered and often requires support from therapists, counselors, faith leaders, or trusted friends. Victims have to relearn how to trust themselves, because that's the thing that's been taken away in these types of relationships: the victim's ability to trust themselves. They have to learn how to set boundaries again and realize that it is okay to set boundaries. They have to also relearn how to recognize healthy love. According to Herman, recovery from psychological trauma involves 3 stages, which is establishing safety, reconstructing the trauma story, and restoring the connection between survivor and their community. This framework is especially relevant for survivors of emotional abuse, who often feel disconnected from themselves and from others. So, recognizing emotional abuse is only the first step. Naming it is the second, and healing from it is a journey, and one that requires compassion, courage, and community. So if you are in a relationship where love consistently hurts, you are not alone, and you are not crazy. You are worthy of love that heals, not love that harms. Now, let's talk about something that's often overlooked in emotionally abusive relationships: the decision to stay or leave. Now, this is not a one-size-fits-all moment. It's layered, personal, and often complicated by love, history, fear, and hope. So if you are in a relationship that feels emotionally unsafe, the first question isn't always, should I leave? Sometimes it's, what do I need to do to feel safe right now? Emotional safety is the foundation for clarity. Without it, decisions are made from fear and not freedom. So you are allowed to pause. You are allowed to assess. And most importantly, you are allowed to change your mind. Maybe today you feel strong enough to leave. Maybe tomorrow you feel unsure. That doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. And healing is not linear. Neither is decision making in complex relationships. So here are a few questions to help guide your reflection. Question number 1. Do I feel emotionally safe in this relationship? Question number 2. Am I able to express my needs without fear? Question number 3. Is my identity expanding or shrinking in this dynamic? Question number 4. What would staying look like if nothing changed? Question number 5. What would leaving look like if I had support? Sometimes staying is a survival strategy. Sometimes leaving is an act of self-rescue. Both are valid. What matters is that you're making decisions from a place of truth and not a place of pressure. And if you decide to leave, you don't have to do it all at once. You can take small steps, build support, gather resources, and reclaim your voice. If you decide to stay, you can set boundaries, seek counseling, and monitor whether change is truly happening. The key is this: you are allowed to change your mind when the situation becomes harmful or emotionally unsafe. You are not obligated to stay in pain just because you once chose love. Here are some healing exercises that are designed to help you reconnect with yourself, set boundaries, and begin healing. Exercise number 1, emotional check-in journal. Write down how you feel each morning and evening. Use prompts like, what triggered me today? What did I need emotionally? Exercise number 2, boundary mapping. Draw a circle and list what behaviors you will and won't accept in relationships. Revisit this weekly. Exercise number 3, self-compassion mirror work. Stand in front of a mirror and say, I deserve love that doesn't hurt. Repeat affirmations daily. Exercise number 4, conflict pause practice. When tensions arise, take 5-minute breaks. Breathe deeply and ask, what am I feeling? What do I need? Exercise number 5, connection ritual. Choose one daily activity that builds emotional safety, like a 10-minute check-in or a shared prayer. Now, all of these exercises I put into a PDF, which I've created, and you can download this PDF with these exercises from today's episode. This PDF has been designed for you so that throughout the week, you can have something to look back on to remember these exercises and actually do them and reflect on them. Now, the song we're going to listen to today is called Worth Loving, and it is by our podcast artist, Emery Rose, and it is a song about a woman, which could be you, me, or any of us, because I feel like all women, we sometimes feel like if we're not doing something, or we're not the perfect mom or wife, or we don't have this in our lives, that we are not worth loving, and that is absolutely not true. So wherever you are in your life, whatever you're doing, however you feel, you are absolutely worth loving. And not only are you worth loving, but you deserve to be in a relationship where you are loved and not emotionally abused or abused in any way. You are worth loving. So here is our song, Worth Loving, by our podcast artist, Emery Rose.
There were times in my life when I felt like I had to be the woman you wanted me to be. So I gave up my goals, my morals and my values, trying to let you know that I was down for you. Then I looked in the mirror, I didn't want to see the person who was standing there. I didn't recognize me when I looked in the mirror. I didn't want to see the person who was standing there. I didn't recognize me. I had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving. I had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving. You did me wrong so many times. You make me feel like the problem was me. No, there were nights I cried myself to sleep, praying and asking God to work it out for me. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't want to see the person who was standing there. I didn't recognize me when I looked in the mirror. I didn't want to see the person who was standing there. I didn't recognize me. I had to realize I was worth loving, 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 loving. I had to realize I was worth loving, 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 loving. I lost myself in you, something I never thought I would do. I gave my heart to you, you took my heart and you threw it away. I had to had to realize that I was worth loving, loving, loving.
So the homework assignment that I have for you this week is for you to practice the conflict pause practice. So every time you feel tension rising, instead of reacting, I want you to pause, breathe, reflect, then respond with clarity and compassion. Also, choose one person you trust and share something vulnerable. Connections begin with honesty. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it. Emotional abuse thrives in silence, but healing begins with truth. You are worthy of love that doesn't hurt. You are worthy of peace. You are worthy of healing. Until next time, I'm Keana W. Mitchell, and this is the Music and Therapy Podcast with relationship coach Keana W. Mitchell. Have an amazing day and an awesome weekend. Bye-bye. Broken, I scream in, but it's